From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me Frankie, the CTO of Gemba. Frankie, the way I like to do it, I give it to the guests to introduce themselves because I believe they are the best ones to do that. So thank you very much for being on the show. The floor is yours.
Excellent. My name is Frankie Cavanagh. I'm the CTO of Gemba. My background is in video games and generally in tech. I'm also a university lecturer that specializes in coding to 3D art, all aspects, but predominantly design.
That's cool. What brought you into this domain? I can't imagine from what I'm seeing in the background that you love gaming actually, but can you a little bit ask what attracted you to be in this field?
Yeah. My kind of passion originally was 3D art and 3D animation. That's where I started in the industry. And while I was at university, I entered a business competition and a business startup doing tech and back in the day. And the idea was to create digital artworks online and have them displayed in real world galleries across the world. Okay? So I kind of got the taste for running my own business and being your own boss and things like that. And then I went into lecturing, and for a long time I was a university lecturer. Started courses and looked for spaces in the world of education and trends. So stuff like robotics, video game design, video game engineering, and things like that, that at the time were just up and coming. And then moved into the industry more. So I was working in video games, started in AAA, so kind of high-end midway, Sony XDev, places like that. And then after years of teaching and working for other people, I decided to run my own business. And so before I worked at Gemba, we still run a video games company. And the idea was how I became CTO at Gemba was I have a weird set of skills. I sound like I'm on Taken now. Starting with kind of my video game background, so the fun bit, then the teaching, the pedagogy. So you have the ludology from video games, then pedagogy from kind of from the teaching aspect, and then that kind of passion for tech and what's new and things like that. So that's kind of how I didn't start as CTO. I started as designer and kind of worked my way up in the company.
That's very cool. So now let's dive a little bit into the VR world. So can you tell me how you're leveraging VR to transform traditional workforce training? And to be honest with you, I'm excited because I was in the corporate world, and it was not usually the funniest part of it. So what what has been the immediate impacts on engagement and retention from what you have seen?
So I think the thing to understand, I think there's the meme of people going through training, click, forced training. I think the misunderstanding, and I think even at Gemba when I first started, that there's a level of professionalism where, when you get to C level, you stop wanting to have fun. But it's kind of, you go home, you watch the same programs, you're looking for that same level of entertainment. As a lecturer, I always knew that if I could engage with a student in whatever way, whether that be jumping around or playing a game or doing something like that, I could teach quite high level concepts. So really it comes from that. It comes from being a human and wanting to, people to enjoy. And I knew if I could capture them for a second, if I had them engaged, I could teach them anything. So the best way at the moment, the best way of doing that is with VR. There's lots of ways of doing it. In real life, it's quite engaging, but there's nothing quite like being able to take someone to a different world or a different or an enclosed environment where they get to think about problem solving or how to manage a task or do a war room. So the idea of VR allows us to, first of all, take you to completely different places where you need to be the best place for that level of training. And secondly, what it allows us to do is a completely safe environment. So if we were doing very dangerous health and safety training, for example, we can do it, still get the message across that it's very important, but move people away from that traditional PowerPoint training. And that's exactly what we're looking to do. Predominantly the things that we're teaching, we teach a very wide range of things to a lot of different clients. Traditionally, we're a management training, so it's along the lines of Lean, Six Sigma, Agile. Those are the things. And being able to put somebody in an experience where you're in a stand-up meeting as a conflict or a conflict with a stakeholder, how are you going to deal with that situation? And being able to adapt it and change it so every time they get a different experience. But yeah, so that's really what it is. It's the ultimate role player experience.
That's cool, really. Like, you know, have you seen any, in real world, like you gave some now, but um, like what was, for example, an aha moment for a client that he tried it and, like he said, yeah, like we were doing this and now because of Gemba, like we reached this.
So one of our bigger clients travels around the world and big automotive company. And he has a small team of people and his job is to travel around the world. And he gets there and he's got to be on top form. His ability to train hundreds of people at once from his home or from his office here, I think was the big push moment. Right, traditionally, Gemba was a traditional training, and then COVID hit, and then people and I was working for the R&D department at the time, created this demonstration. No real events were happening, so we did this. And the aha moment was when people didn't want to go back to doing real world events anymore. And I think every client that we've had has preferred, or 99, I'm sure there's somebody that didn't, but 99.9% of people not only enjoyed it more, but also started seeing where we could take this next. So a lot of the stuff is, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And a lot of time is spent with Gemba we have two systems, Flex and Adapt, that allow the systems to adapt to your wants and needs. So I think that was the big aha moment for a lot of our clients, where as soon as they tried it and they were like, we prefer it this way to the real world. So that was a big kind of and a big push moment, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Now because we touch base on this, about transitions. So usually, and I've been in that world also myself. So when you bring something new to the game,
Yeah,
always people, there will be some friction sometime, and people will tell you,
100%.
hey, like there will be like some learning curve because this VR is something new to us.
100%.
So how do you address such, I would say, let's call them like not challenges, but like
Pushbacks.
kind of pushbacks?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So what we do is, it's again, we pride ourselves on teaching and being the best at teaching. So the idea is, most of the things, or a lot of the things we get taught, especially the things that are forced upon us, we don't necessarily want to change. People have a problem with change. A lot of the things I teach, Industry 4.0, and what's that going to do to your job and things like that. So we took the first part of what we're pushed for is we do a lot of hand holding and we support the people that are doing that. And normally it's a trickle down effect. So we get those people at the top. We've got multiple levels of support, whether that's turning the headset on, we've got a team for that. Whether it's understanding what VR is and how it works with your environment, we've got a team for that. Understanding how we can adapt your training from a PowerPoint to a VR environment and what the changes, because we don't just want to replicate what's going on in the real world. We support these people all the way through. And I think that's the point. And it's a bit like pushing a snowball. It gets to a point and then I can step back and the snowball starts rolling by itself. And then it's like it spreads across the business. And I think that's, once you get into the right key people, that's the core part. And once you can get that message across, and normally in my discovery, I'll ask for the people who don't want VR in that discovery. And I've done this for a long time to understand. So once I get those people on side, everything else is fine. Because it's great filling a room up with people who love VR and want change. But the people I want in that meeting are the person who's like, what's the point of this? I don't see this is really expensive. We can just use our old PowerPoint, or we can use our TV to do this. Once I get them on side, then everything else. But to be honest, from my side of things, there hasn't been a lot of pushback. We do a lot of kind of, again, I would say 0.1%, 1% of pushback. And, and these, our demographic are not always, the young tech guys. We've got people that have been working in the industry for a long time. But the important thing to understand is the people who work in this industry or they're pushing for change all the time. Their job is to, how do we cut, how do we move the needle? That's the important
Right.
bit. Now, if VR moves the needle, whether they want it or not, they know they've got to do it. So it's normally embraced very quickly as soon as they see the kind of possibilities of it.
Yeah, I love that, Frank, because like it's exactly I would call it the consultative approach, and like telling the customers that seeing is believing. You know,
100%.
I've done this for more than 10 years, so I know exactly where you're coming from. Now, back to your background as game designer. So, what aspect of game design principles like you found are most applicable in creating effective training modules?
So there's two. There's a word that's banded around a lot, gamification, and we talk about that quite a lot. However, there's normally a misunderstanding. People think we do a lot of gamification. We do gamification. But there's three aspects of kind of video games in teaching and learning. First one's gamification. I'll briefly go on. I'm fully aware that
Sure.
you audience will understand it, but the gamification is really about the scoring mechanism and rewards and achievements. Now that's great. But so we have gamification. Some of these terms I might have made up. Gamification I didn't, but gamifying learning is about the fun aspects. It's the ludology. It's the ability to not feed you the answer. So, for example, if we were looking at 8 wastes in an environment from a lean perspective, traditionally I would just tell you what those 8 wastes are and expect you to do that. For example, we'll create an automotive environment and you'll go out running around with your team on a timer, looking for those 8 wastes, and you've got to bring them back and put them on the board. And it's that sense, and it becomes experience. What you get from VR video games, even more so than video games, is it becomes a real event that's happened. Very few people will stand at the water cooler and go, never guess the training I've just been in. But if they're just like, I was on the space station, it exploded, and I had to put 8 steps in place from a lean perspective to get the spaceship back and then repair it and things like that. It becomes experience, and that's what you get from VR. When people talk about VR video games, they talk about it as if it actually happened to them because you're standing, what you're seeing, the senses are enclosed. So you've got that side of it, and then you've got the third one, which is a little bit more nuanced, is stretch and support. Now, in video games such as Left 4 Dead, which is a zombie game, you're running around shooting zombies. Now, what the game does very cleverly is if you're not very good at it, it reduces the zombies down and gives you more health. If you're great at it, it starts throwing more zombies at you. Now, that principle, when it comes to teaching and learning, as a lecturer or a teacher, what you want to do is differentiate between every student in that class. Someone's going to be great, but when you've got 100 people in the room, it's really difficult to differentiate your learning for each one of them. Now, in VR, what we're able to do is understand what areas you're weak in, or what areas you're strong in, and it's called stretch and support EI system. So I use a very simple EI kind of system, and what it does is it understands so if we were doing times table, for example, it understands that 7 times 7 is your weak area. So it will support you and give you what questions around it and that area, and then it'll push you for the ones you know very much. The areas you're very good at, it'll push you to stretch you in that direction. So stretch and support EI. So it's been done in video games, and again, it is an ideal teacher. That's what you're aiming to produce. So those 3 aspects: so gamification, gamifying learning, which is just making it fun, and the environments, the sounds, the experience, and stretch and support. I don't actually. So it would be kind of changing the balance of the game. It's the balancing the game out for a different level of player.
Yeah, it's pretty much very clear, Frankie. And I think, maybe because you've been a lecturer as well, this has helped you also in getting this, especially when you gave the example of the timetable. So maybe this has affected also the way you came up with the whole concept.
Kind of. It's unfortunately the concept's not quite mine, but it's a accumulation of people. But the actual doing a PGCE or a teaching qualification teaches you certain things, and the disappointing part is you can't always achieve those. And I think it's a weird trifecta of the tech that I'm interested in, being a teacher, and the games give me a weird kind of trifecta of information that helps. And it's just kind of, but understanding that level of kind of, when you get to a certain point where you're trying to understand very high level concepts, and it
Mhm.
moves on directly from that, from the teaching to actually doing it as a tool. So what we do at Gemba is you've got that teaching aspect, and then we say, now you know how to use it, you can actually use it. And what we're seeing more and more every day is people using Gemba as a tool as well as the teaching. So they're working in there. They've got people from across the world that want to collaborate on a certain machine or on a problem, and they're coming together to do that in the environment. So the teaching and the tools are now kind of integrating as one.
That's really great. And I think, we touched base a little bit on the barriers, but I'm more interested in how do you see this technology being applied more in the workplace, like like beyond just the traditional onboarding maybe and these things. So
So for
what we can expect in the future?
So I think what you'll actually see is, and what we're actually working on with a lot of our clients at the moment is, um, the not just the onboarding, but what happens in a lot of production um, factories is they have to change the production line a lot, and that means high speed changing of information, or being able to see inside of machinery and things like that. Or if it's super complicated, they want heads up displays. Now with Apple Vision and things like that, the versions that we're running at the moment allow not the VR world or mixed reality or spatial computing, whichever the term, XR, there's plenty of them. But what that means is it's expected for it to become a day-to-day. Meta's kind of plan is for you to carry your headset into work with you like you do your laptop. And I think Apple are very much moving along those lines. Possibly not, but a lot of their talk was about the workforce. And a lot of the stuff we do now, when I'm not in a video call, I've got a headset on that's got pass-through on it. Now that allows me to kind of talk to my colleagues, work, have a heads-up display here, and see what's going on. And so I genuinely think as the headsets get smaller, lighter, more comfortable, that ability to kind of them to become like our watch or our phone or a pair of glasses is the next logical step for that. And it'll seamlessly integrate into our lives.
It's a very futuristic approach because like I'm imagining maybe like I would be doing podcasts using a VR technology also as well, where I will be like, instead of being in this setup, so we'll be like sitting in a proper studio maybe.
Well, I can tell you as a fact, I got interviewed by a giant donut in VR quite recently. So so it's not that unusual. It's kind of, like podcasting's being done in VR at the moment. I think that the things that kind of moving again, I think it might seem very futuristic, but we're not that far away from it. It's kind of, I mean, we've got, like, I walk around, I work in a big tech building, and the amount of people that are working in VRs and don't have any monitors in front of them, at least 20 of our staff don't use monitors anymore because it's space and they can move around, and the ability to sit at a desk and they take their wireless keyboard and they type, and they've got 10 screens in front of them, high resolution screens that they're more than capable of working on. So I don't think with that, it might seem, and I think that's maybe one of the issues. People think it's this super far away. It's very much in grasp, and the more people embrace it, the more it becomes today rather than tomorrow.
So Frank, just out of curiosity, it came to my mind now. Do you think like if it becomes, and I'm sure it's gonna come more widely adopted, and even by home users, I would say, not only in business.
100%.
Do you
Yes.
think we gonna at some stage get rid of these huge screens and monitors that we use today?
So it's already, so if you look at the Apple Vision, strangely, I have a pair of glasses, and I have at home, I have a man cave with a big 120-inch TV inside of it. And I have a pair of ER glasses, which are just like Wayfair, like glasses, just normal sunglasses. And the screen perfectly matches the TV in front of me. And I'm like, that was quite an expensive TV that I maybe didn't. But then and it also has advantages. So yes, it's a 100. That'll probably be the first thing that happens, is because they're cheaper produced than when you've got a VR headset, it's all singing, all dancing. That's one thing. A lot of the ER headsets at the moment are replicating screens. So at the moment, when I'm on an aeroplane or when I'm not near a big screen and I need multiple screens, I literally just plug the glasses into my computer and I work like that. Or if I'm on a plane, I can work, or even if I'm watching a movie, it's a 120, 130-inch screen in front of you, and reasonably inexpensive.
Wow, yeah, I'm looking forward to have it, like buying as a phone or or a laptop. Like just also a couple of things like we maybe talked about. What do you see the challenges in the adoption, in the mass adoption?
I think the mass adoption are, first of all, it's one of those things. Once you've tried it, it's fine. That's getting it in people's hands. I think the bigger thing is to be able to. It needs to be smaller, lighter, more comfortable. That's the biggest thing, and really the only thing. Price point's going to come down, but yeah.
Yeah, hopefully the price, it's one of the things that I wish it goes down as soon as possible, right? So, um, like one thing also, like out of curiosity, I ask, and this is usually, it's not like to make up the question or something, but
Mm.
I believe like technologies merge somehow with each others.
Yeah.
So are you expecting to be the next thing that we are gonna mix with? And I'm not asking you to tell me AI specifically, but because some of my guests told me AI. But when are you see an intersection coming very soon with other technologies? Maybe AI, maybe something else.
I think, as I see it, there's a lot of technology that's kind of coming together at the moment. If you look at some of the games engines, for example, so huge steps have been made in kind of CG steps where, for example, up until still now, we worry about polygons and things like that. How many? If you look at what Unreal are doing with their games engine, where it's almost unlimited polys now and very super realistic stuff, having that tech in a headset means almost super realistic visuals. EI is a huge part of this, and it's one of the more scary, fast-moving worlds. Something that we've got to embrace change. It's kind of, I worry about anybody investing heavily in EI at the moment, because whatever it is now, I watch, because I use a lot of software. All of our company embrace EI as much as possible. Just as you get used to one thing, the next week there's huge weirds and huge changes. And in the industry, in the tech industry as a whole, especially video games, things are changing very quickly. So, from image generation, which is probably doing some damage to concept artists out there, VO voiceovers. From now, I saw there's some nice new 3D create 3D objects, or rigs things. It's and obviously the coding side of it is getting, even the design side of it, running my stuff through an AI system to be able to adapt to a client's needs. So we have our own AI solution. And so, yeah, EI is the obvious answer, but I definitely think from a kind of computer graphics thing, those two, obviously the EI outweighs that a lot, but not worrying about the performance issues. I think once they figure out how to get that onto a smaller headset, at the moment you need a big hefty graphics card to make that run. Not a big hefty graphics, like it's PS5, Sony PS5. Um,
Hmm.
Once that's on the headset at headset level, then you get unlimited graphics pretty much, or pretty close to unlimited polys and real-time lighting and things like that. So those two things, but I think AI is definitely the most important thing to worry about. It's but also embrace, I think, is the important part.
Yeah, that's great. So, um, as we are coming a little bit to an end, Frankie. So I'm interested, and this is always I repeat it, with every guest I have,
Mm.
about some lessons learned. So, what have been the most significant challenges and triumphs like that as a CTO of Gamba, and
Yeah.
how have they shaped your leadership approach?
I have changed quite a lot. I mean, it's going from somebody that I think the yeah, I think the things I'm still learning now. There's no, this is not something like some of these things are very new to me. Somebody said quite recently to me, is two things. One of and it's an old adage, but it's kind of I think people, especially people in my business, in tech and things like that, forget people. If we worked in hardware, people want to know. People sell you the drill bit, the 9mm drill bit. They'll tell you how fast it drills and how how sharp it is, how long it's going to last. The client only cares about the 9mm hole, and that's quite the important thing. So try to focus on the hole rather than the drill bit, but understand that they go hand in hand. And I think when I'm talking to clients, and I try not to get wrapped up, even in the tech, it's in my job title, but it's but really what I care about is thinking about the human aspect of that. How is this going to impact you? What does it feel
Hmm.
like? You know what I mean? And like a lot of the things that have kind of touched me and changed me over the years is people understanding or panicking about Industry 4.0, or the new whatever the metaverse is called today, Web 3.0. You know what I mean? But being, I treat everybody as kind of in the same kind of way, but s- the general idea that we're looking for is, or the things that have changed me has been the people. I wasn't a particularly good manager, and over time is understanding how people feel, how people react, and being slightly chameleonic with who I'm speaking to and when I'm speaking to them was how I reacted a long time ago. Now you just get Frankie all the time, I'm afraid. It's just whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's the one thing I've learned, not to pretend to be anything you're not. If you don't know, it's not a bad thing to go, I don't know, but I know this and I can do this instead. So yeah, that would be yourself. It's is always a good thing.
Great. Now, also maybe a lot of, usually I try to target younger people than me, I would say, and fellow entrepreneurs, and fellow people who are interested in tech.
Yeah.
So, what you advise these professional students, fellow entrepreneurs who want to pursue a career, maybe, or they want to choose the path of the AR, VR, and metaverse. So, what are some of the advice that you can share with them?
Okay. I think just generally, so I ran a business for a long time. I still continue to run a business as well as alongside Gemba. Um, Stabilization is hugely important, okay, because you can't, in order to do the things that we do, especially with new tech, you need to be able to take risks. Okay? Now, if you're taking risks, you don't want to be in a position where your family's at jeopardy, your house is on the line. So what I genuinely stabilize your business as fast as you can. If you want to do it if you're running a business, if you're an entrepreneur, keep that full-time job, do you know what I mean? And work it up. Or maybe go part-time, get a credit card. That's what I did. I borrowed a credit card. Um, my partner's an accountant, so it's a little easier. Borrowed the credit card and I went part-time, and that was my stable. And then I could take the risks here. And I think, because what happens if you don't take the risks is you become stale, and you need to be able to take those risks. You need to be able to stand up in front of a client and go, no, I don't want to do that. We're not going to take that risk, or we're not going to be treated like that. So I genuinely think, and it's just the next level of stabilization. That's the point. And I think that any advice I would give is you don't have to risk everything. It means working a little bit harder. Maybe it's a few later hours. Maybe you don't go on holiday that year. But stabilizing where you sit in life and then go, now I can take these risks. I can take risks 50% of the time. Now I can take risks 60% of the time. That's what I'd advise, is to kind of stabilize, even if you're working as a barista, you know what I mean? So you can cover the rent. You're not going to worry about that, you know what I mean? And then it's kind of, then you can take these bigger risks and make the bigger changes. And that's what being, running a business or running in tech or VR, ER, AI, because things change too fast to bet the house on. So yeah, that would be my advice.
That's spot on, Frankie. Like, you touched base on something that I always repeat. Like, we always hear this advice about acting fast and taking, take actions, but now, like, no time before. And this is, like, one person advised me the other day. Like, he said, why you're doing this podcast daily? And I said, you know what? Because I'm afraid now I have some backlog. Let's say it's like maybe 5-6 episodes. So when someone mentions something today, after 5 weeks, I'm not sure if it's still relevant or not. So
it's true.
so things are changing very fast, and I would second your advice on this about acting fast. Lessons learned. I always mention this. Like, I always kept pushing things, and then at some stage, I said, okay, it's good that I figured it out. But as Frankie said, act today. Of course, take calculated risks, I would say. But yeah, you need to do it. Frankie, is there anything like you wish that I asked you? This is how should I end my interview?
Anything I wish you'd asked me? No, it was all good. I mean, I have a tendency in all interviews, I try and deliberately upset people by asking them a question they wouldn't expect. So I sometimes ask, what are you watching on Netflix at the moment? And I see because what happens is people have got a preset thing of what they're going to answer and how they're going to answer them. So I like getting people off their kilter, and making sure they're a little bit uncomfortable, in the nicest way possible. But yes, so maybe something that would have, something I couldn't answer. That would be an interesting. Watch me panic.
I don't like to do it, Frankie, honestly. Because, by the way, when I asked this question, some of the guys, they thought that I'm putting them in a, like, of course, in the joking way. Like, they said, oh, like, are you trying to, get us embarrassed? Or I said, no, like, because maybe I missed any point, that, and maybe you have something that you wished really to say, and maybe I didn't ask, or there was no way to convey this. So this is why I asked this question usually. Great, Frankie. Thank you very much for being on this episode today. And where can we find more about you and Gemba? I will put all these links in the episode description.
The website. If you got the Gemba website, it'll give you all the information. If anybody wants to contact me, I've got a LinkedIn or some means you can contact me any way you want. Through Gemba is probably the easiest way. I'm reasonably secretive. I just hide in the shadows behind the computers, but you can definitely get to me if you're interested.
Yeah, sure. I will put the website of the company. That's definitely something I would do. And this is for my audience, guys. Like, keep the feedbacks coming. I am enjoying reading the feedbacks, both the positive and negative ones. I'm not having a lot of negative, but anyway, yeah, please keep them coming. I'm happy that you are getting engaged, and now we have the newsletter also as well. We have the show itself, and a lot of things are coming also very, very soon. Maybe by the time this goes live, there will be something live out there. So also, if you are interested, if you are watching or listening to this and you are interested of being a guest, the way Frankie was a guest today, don't be shy. Reach out to me. Time zones, no problem at all. I'm lucky to be somewhere in the middle in Dubai, so I can afford people on the West Coast. I can afford people in New Zealand. So it's all working fine. Thank you for tuning in, and we will meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.